Domain-Driven Transformation with Carola Lilienthal and Henning Schwentner.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. I'm excited about our guest today on the show. We have two. We have Carola Lilienthal and Henning Schwentner. And Carola is an architect and coach at Workplace Solutions, and she's the author of Sustainable Software Architecture and shares her knowledge at international conferences. Henning is a software architect, coach, and consultant at Workplace Solutions as well, where he helps teams modernize legacy systems. He is a thought leader in domain-driven design and software architecture, and he also has authored Domain Storytelling. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm sitting in France and I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm good too. Thanks for the invitation, and it's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm holding in my hand the book Domain-Driven Transformation. I literally received it just now, and it's a book written by you both. Domain-Driven Transformation: Modernize Legacy Systems and Mitigate Risk, with a foreword by Michael Feathers, who I think everyone listening also read work from Michael Feathers.
Yeah.
But I want to ask about the book and dig into it. And so I'd love to get the story of how that book came about and how you both kind of paired up and teamed up to author it.
So the both of us, we have been building software, consulting teams, building software for a long time, and DDD, domain-driven design, was always an important part, or maybe the most important part there. And we've consulted on many projects which build new software on a green field. But truth be told, of course, most of the time you're not on a green field. You are on a brown field where there is already software that has to be modernized, that has to be transformed. And what we've seen is that many systems that we are working on have not been developed with a DDD mindset, but can be improved a lot by using DDD ideas. And that's why in many projects we introduce DDD ideas after the fact on different levels, on strategic level and tactical level both. So on a strategic level, this helps to split the monolith, split the big ball of mud, bring more modularity to software. In DDD terms, bring a bounded context, or the idea of bounded context, to it. And on a tactical level, bring the ideas of a clean domain model with entities and value objects and stuff like that to the system. And I think it's interesting that the three of us are together here because onion architecture is, of course, something that can help a lot there too, where we have a lot of similar and matching ideas of we want to build a clean domain model, and around this clean domain model, we want to build the system, add layer by layer to the onion to go there. And many legacy systems, of course, do not do that, do not have that. And the domain code, the business logic is connected to technical code, and you never are really 100% sure, is this line of code, is this technical code, is this business logic? Often it's both of it. Part of the tactical transformation is to clean that up and to separate these two concerns, technical logic on the one hand and business logic on the other hand.
And maybe I can put in some other stories how this book came about, because in 2004 we read the book of Eric Evans about domain-driven design, and we loved it, and we started to program that way. This is what Henning already mentioned. But we started as well digging into old software, legacy software. And this is, you already mentioned my first book, Sustainable Software Architecture, where in that book I work a lot about what is complex in software architecture and how can we measure that, and what can we do to get the software system in a better state so that people can quickly understand the structures, find their way around, because old software, I mean, new one as well, grows and grows and is so huge that people don't find their way around. And then we are as well, our name as company is Workplace Solutions. So we are trying to produce software that is really good for the people working with it on their workplace, that really helps processes in the workplace to be done in a quick and a very good coordinated way. And all that went into the book that you mentioned as well of Henning, domain storytelling, which is a technique that we use to find out about the domain, actually, what the people are doing in there. And then we saw that we can use all this to get legacy software into a better state. So we do the domain storytelling to find out how the software should be actually. Then we measure how it is today. And then we put it together and do the transformation. So it step by step, we did different things, and then they fell together. And wow, we were there, and we said, oh yeah, this is what we are doing. We are doing domain-driven transformation, and we are having a method, a normal thing that we are doing every time. We're following these steps, and the result is that we have a legacy afterwards where people find their way around, where you can build new stuff, and you have something that is really well structured. So it's as well a story of, I don't know, 10 years of work, that ran into this book in the end.
Yeah, and it's like always, you do something in practice and you see what works, what does not work, and the both of us have worked with many different clients from many different domains, and over time it crystallized what was a good approach, and then we learned, hey, this is something that we can do again and again. Use this approach or this method, this idea, where we first start with not focusing on the legacy system, but re-understanding what's happening in the domain, and use that domain knowledge to develop what we call a target architecture. And then see, okay, now that we have this idea of target architecture, what is the architecture that we actually have? And kind of find an alignment, and then usually see, well, this is where we want to go, and well, somewhere else is where we are, and now we have to do this move here from where we are to where we want to go. And seeing that this approach worked in so many cases, it was clear for the both of us, hey, this makes sense to write down. We've given talks on it, and then finally we said, hey, we have to put it in text. So this is something that other people can use. And then we started to write that, and well, as you know, it takes a lot of time until you finally have a text that can be published. And here we are.
So back in 2004, Eric Evans, he publishes the Light Blue book, the big book, Domain-Driven Design, and took a lot of industry conversation around it, and we found that a lot of people didn't read to the end and get to the part about bounded context, for example, and so now we have 22 years since that book, and just like 2006, the continuous integration book came out. It got talked about, but then fast forward to today, a lot of younger people, they haven't read that book, and maybe they've read a blog post, or they've read snippets of maybe what this concept is. And so I want to get to the transformation part of it, but with domain-driven design, with 22 years of experience now, what are like the most important parts of that original work that have stood the test of time?
Well, today when I talk to people about this book, I advise them to start at page 120, where the strategic design appears, because because a lot of people did this whole tactical stuff like building blocks, entities, value objects, and all that, which is already wonderful. I tell them, you did a good job that you started to have value objects in your software. But the actual interesting part is this idea about cutting software into domain parts, to have modules that are related to the domain. This is actually, from my point of view, one of the most important things. And value objects. I'm a big fan of value objects. I have to admit, they are wonderful in having the domain in the source code. But Henning has often a different idea than myself. So let's
That's
see.
true. Talking about the history of the book, it's also a history of a lot of discussion and maybe even fights going on what is the right thing to do and to say here. But I agree a lot with the both of you that strategic design is something that was underrated in the first place, that was misunderstood or not understood by many people that read the Blue Book and that got an idea into DDD. And that's why I think it's good and important that newer books on DDD often start with strategic stuff to emphasize, hey, this is important, and these are ideas that you do not get on other places. And also, I think that the idea of ubiquitous language, so bringing the language of the domain, bringing the language of our users everywhere, even into the code, that is an important and an important thing that helps a lot. And doing a domain-driven transformation, it starts with the simple rename refactoring, because you name variables that are called X and Y into something meaningful and say, this is a movie ticket. And a method that does not have an interesting name gets a name that shows, okay, hey, here, this is buy because here you buy a ticket, or that's reserve because here you reserve a seat to later buy a ticket when you are in a movie theater domain. And it's so important to bring that into the software, this language, because that transports the knowledge on different parts there. Yeah. And talking about DDD and younger programmers maybe not having read the Blue Book, maybe something on the internet, maybe a blog post or something, that is true for DDD and also for many other roots and foundations that are important for what we call domain-driven transformation. That's why we decided eventually to start the book with a foundational part to say, hey, these are all the foundation, and dear reader, pick the foundations that you need, that you're not sure with, so you can take this one book and then go on to the real transformation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So because there are so many roots, DDD is one of them. Architecture concepts like onion architecture, clean architecture, ports and adapters is another thing. And then there's collaborative modeling. Carola said that already. And all of these three areas, that's something that you have to have at least basic knowledge so that you can approach the transformation.
Mm-hmm. Now, and so you started the book with domain-driven design, but you added the word transformation to it. So I want to kind of dig into that now. And you mentioned that briefly, but what does it mean? What was the big idea where you found yourself giving conference presentations and talking at work about transformation, and you figured out an actual process? What did you figure? What did you figure out?
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's also about the history of the book, right? So it started, the working title was something like splitting monoliths into maybe microservices or something more modular. And then, of course, it was clear from the beginning that we wanted to use bounded context and strategic design to split the monolith. But over time, we saw, well, it is about splitting monoliths, but not only about splitting monoliths. It's also about other diseases that legacy systems have. So we look onto a legacy system as like a sick person, a patient that we have to see, hey, which diseases are there and which is the worst disease, where do we have to start? And this thing of, we have a big ball of mud, so there is no vertical structure, no bounded context. That often goes together with, we don't have a real domain model. It's maybe only an anemic domain model, or it's messed up. We have a smart UI or something like that. Plus, we also often see that the team organization is not fitting for this more modular concept. So team reorganization is also a topic that we cover. Team topologies is, for example, something that's interesting.
And for us, it was we wanted to emphasize with this title that we have a legacy system and we have to transform it anyway. This is what we have to do in a lot of places today with a lot of clients. But this transformation is done domain driven. It's not something technical. Like microservices, from my feeling, what I saw the last 12 years, people misunderstood it a lot and did something technical. And I was 2012, Eric Evans was in Munich on a conference, and he had a little workshop on domain-driven design, and there were 12 people sitting there. This is how it started, and how they started to speak about DDD and microservices. And we did a lot of talks about, listen to us, microservices, they are bounded contexts and not something technical. You're not having one entity with one service, and this is a microservice. And please, not 100 microservices in 250,000 lines of code. This is not a good idea. This is too small. All that stuff, And so we decided to have this name to make really clear it's about the domain. It's not a technical idea that we are following here with our transformation.
It's also important that inside a legacy system, there is what we call a treasure. That's the treasure of domain knowledge. There's a lot of technical stuff or technical dust around that has aged over the last decades. Maybe we don't want to use that old UI technology anymore. We want to use something fancy from today. But this system has aged for a reason. There are many systems that have that are extinct now, that have passed on the last 20 years. But these legacy systems, they are still there. And why is that? That is because they did their job well, in the sense of they did support their domain well. And it's usually worth it to dig out that treasure. And that is the transformation of that system. Find the treasure, remove the technological dust, and focus on what's in there.
And so many clients ask us, should we throw it away and build it anew? And and then software engineers say, oh yes, we're gonna do it with React now, and we use another database, and it will all be wonderful. and then you're in the horrible story of that path, And so we are transforming the legacy software that has a huge business value and needs to survive. It's no use to rebuild it from scratch.
Right.
So,
So I think there's a big idea that just came out, and you mentioned, both of you mentioned the strategic part of domain-driven design and bounded context, and the wave of people rushing to microservices, which is really very technical in nature, and so many people are saying, yes, but I have the big thing, I have to break it up, so microservices is the solution. But can you expound on that a little bit more, of how to, in your mind, figure out the bounds of by which you should split up the big thing?
That is super interesting. And I would say that's maybe kind of the hardest stuff in the whole DDD thing, find the right boundaries. And there are so many mistakes that can be made, and traps that have to be avoided there. And what I think, and Carola, I think you would agree on that point with me, is that it's super important to understand the process, and that context boundaries are often process boundaries. And it's important to find where in the processes do we have sub-processes, and they can help find boundaries. And what many teams misunderstood when they design bounded context or microservices is that they look for the things, the aggregates or entities, and design their bounded context around the entities. And that is kind of design it around data. And what I think is a better approach is design it around behavior. That's why I said it's so important to understand the process, because then we can see what the behavior is.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that it might make sense to model the same thing, the same aggregate, in different bounded contexts with different models. And that's something that feels not good as a programmer when you do it for the first time, because it feels like, oh, aren't we violating the dry principle here? Aren't we repeating ourselves when we build different models of the same thing? And the answer is, well, no, you don't. Not always. You're not always violating the dry principle. When you're building different models, you're building smaller models, and you separate the knowledge about this model and the thing that's behind it into different things, and that often helps a lot with splitting the thing. And there's one more thing that is important here. I said process can help find boundaries, and for some domains, it's easier to find boundaries than for others. And what Carola and I think is that there are different, what we call domain patterns, that can help find these boundaries, and that these domain patterns, they are not so much about the software, they are more about the domain, in the sense of they are about how is the work done in the business. And there are different patterns how this work is done. And Carola, maybe I can switch over to you and you say something about
Yeah, I mean,
Blackboard.
there is a chapter about domain patterns in the book, but it's the last chapter to make clear that this is an idea that we are working on, that we are discovering. It's not, we don't have, I mean, we saw it a lot in different domains, but we didn't do any scientific work on it yet. So to have different, to really measure what is going on there. I always want to measure stuff. So, but we had the feeling, okay, we were talking so much about it. We were talking with our colleagues about it, that this domain was so easy to divide, and this one was so complicated that we decided to put it in there. And it's not so difficult to understand the basic idea, because if you go to a conference and someone gives a speech on domain, on bounded contexts, how you find them, and how you cut a domain into bounded contexts, they normally use domains that are easy to cut, and we call them pipeline domains, which means one person, one actor, one role is doing something on some domain part on. I mean, if you think of Amazon, you are filling your cart with the products you want, and then you click on I buy it, and then you have to pay, next step, and then the products are you know, so it's like step by step, you know, and it's very clear. One actor is doing one thing, throwing the result to the next person, he's going on. So this is a pipeline domain, and it's so easy to cut. And this is normally the example in a keynote or a speech on a conference. But the version, the domain pattern that is the opposite, we called it Blackboard, because a lot of actors are working on the same things without any sequence or anything, all at the same time. We saw that with software that is used to calculate huge machineries, huge factories. One person says, well, we have to use this part, and then this has an effect on other parts, and another person has to change the price. So you don't have a process of going on with the work and giving the result to the next person. And this is so much more difficult to cut, you know. And just to look at domains from this point of view helped us a lot to explain to teams and to managers and everybody why it's not so easy in their case. And to another one, it's very easy. You have to cut here. No other idea needed. You can do it very quickly because it's so obvious. And then you have to have the product that you are selling on Amazon. You have to have it here and there and there. And in the warehouse, it has a different model than where you fill your cart, and this is it's an idea what we are thinking about a lot and hoping to get some feedback from people when they discover that in their own system. You can relate to that. You understand what we are talking about a bit, Jeffrey?
Yeah. Yes.
And it's interesting that this also happens on different levels, that we see these patterns here. So when we think about the movie theater domain again, on a higher level, it's a kind of a pipeline domain because there's always the planning of the schedule. And after that, somebody buys a ticket, and then the movie is watched, and maybe somewhere in between there is the concessions bounded context. So, and we like to use this movie theater domain because it is a typical pipeline domain, and it's easy to see for people. Here are the boundaries. So there's program planning, there's ticket sales, there's concessions, and then there's movie watching or movie presentation.
Right.
But when you look inside of the program planning, for example, that is a Blackboard domain because you start with planning something, or the cinema manager starts with some program and puts a film here and a film there. And then maybe another program manager says, yeah, but we should change it around here and there. And if you want to find more boundaries inside this planning context, that is hard. That's much tougher. And when you're working with a legacy system, well, this part is often so big that it has to be cut into pieces. And then it's interesting to see how we can do this with a Blackboard domain, for example.
That's good. 2004, again, is when domain-driven design kind of first came out and was published about. And fast forward to 2010, 11, 12, and beyond, when cloud and the concept of DevOps came around. Of course, 2006, and well, even before that, over time, automated testing and automated builds, deployments, and infrastructure as code, all these concepts have gotten more mature and mature and mature and mature. How have those intersected and become related to domain-driven design? How do you think about, how that meshes together today?
Okay, so for me, the most important word that you said there is automated testing. So if you want to refactor a system, if you want to transform a system, you want to be sure, well, after the transformation, it does the same things the same way as it did before. And that's why you need a lot of automatic testing. And Michael Feathers has written a lot about this in his book. Interesting is there also the seam model, how you can bring code to, or test to code that was not built with code, with the idea of test in the first place. And having an automated test bed helps a lot to be able to refactor a system. And that's often something that has to be done first in a transformation, that you raise the automatic testing to a certain level. And we have this test automation, and today we have AI, which can also help at this point, because it's easy for an LLM to say, hey, let's build a bed of automated tests that might not be beautiful, but they check for the behavior of the system as it is now. And that can help when you start to transform things that are exactly the same way. Of course, you have to look closely there, but that's another technology that helps here a lot. And what you said with cloud, I think that's another important thing, because when you want to do cloud and when you want to move your old system into the cloud, which many of our customers want to. There are these legacy systems, which are usually big old on-premise systems, sometimes with web interfaces, sometimes with old rich clients. So in .NET terms, there's a nice old WPF
Yep.
or something like that.
Mostly
front
WinForms.
end. And it's monolithic. And yeah, you
Yep.
can just lift and shift that into the cloud, but will cloud help you then a lot? Maybe not. So I often see that this idea of bounded context and microservice goes well hand in hand with we have different parts that are in that run separately in the cloud, and that also helps with what we were saying earlier. This idea of being able to have independent teams work on different pieces of software, and this idea of having independent deployments that gives such a power to these teams to be able, when we stay in the example of the movie theater, that the team that works on the program planning, that they can just deploy their system without affecting the ticket sales system, as long as the interface stays the same, of course, or the interface evolves in a stable way. That's just the way to be quick again, to bring a sustainable pace back to an old legacy system, which is often slowed down in the further development.
Sure. Awesome. Well, as we close up here, the book has just come out, and you're talking to people about it, and you're presenting on it. Now that the text is done, and typically when putting forth a manuscript, you typically finish it, many months ahead of the actual publication date, and your brains are already thinking about what's next, or, ooh, I should have added this in. What are the things that are fresh on your mind that you couldn't get into the book, but you wished you had?
Our story was a bit different because we wrote the book in the first place in German,
Mm.
and it was published 2023.
Amazing.
And then we translated it and got a lot of feedback. And now the English version has 150 pages more and
Amazing.
is completely, it has the same structure, but there's a lot of changed stuff and new stuff. So what we are now heading for is getting the knowledge that has come into the English version back into the German version.
So this is the second edition.
Like forth and back. Yeah.
Amazing.
There must be a second edition in German because the English version is so much better, actually.
Yeah. And so, and to say one topic, which is, which wasn't that big back when we wrote the German version, which became big over time. At the time, that is of course the AI topic. So we added some AI content to this. You're right; it's kind of the second edition that we have here in English. So we added some AI stuff here, but we didn't want to dig too deep into that topic to finish the book and bring it out of the door. So that is something that that we would wish for the next edition, or maybe the next book that should be in there.
But because in the end, these systems are so huge. We are now at a client who has 40 million lines of code.
Yeah.
And in one big thing, imagine that. It's really, wow. And how many people can program to get that thing into smaller pieces? We need AI to do that,
Right.
And we need to find out how we're going to do it with AI, and how can it help? And this is what we are doing with customers now, and that should be the next thing. So in the end, wow, even the last part, programming, will get quicker,
Right. Right. Absolutely.
That's the point. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me on the podcast and sharing with us the story of your latest book, the English edition of Domain-Driven Transformation. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot.
And listeners, if you have not ordered your copy of Domain-Driven Transformation, you can find that online wherever you get your books. and I certainly look forward to finishing my copy, which I've started.
Thank
And
you.
my pleasure to have you both. And dear listener, until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.